About 3 or 4 podcasts ago, I interviewed someone who's written a series of articles about ritual abuse and the Mormon Church. And I'd heard about that earlier. And actually, there was a commission set up in Utah in 1992, I believe it was, to look at ritual abuse in Utah. And they came to the conclusion that there was actually ritual abuse in Utah.
Well, none of it surprises me. When you have, why wouldn't they? I mean, from my perspective is, why wouldn't they? We know right now, it's almost a cliche that the Catholic Church was involved in pedophilia, right? And protecting pedophile priests.
So this was one other thing I wanted to bring up. I didn't get to hear this episode of your podcast yet, but you did a 2-part episode titled Exploring the Occult with Peter Levenda. And I really like Peter's books. I've interviewed him here before, but I wanted to hear a little bit about your conversation with Peter, or your just general thoughts on an occult overlap with these abductions. It does come up, and it isn't nothing. Maybe it's overblown sometimes, but it's not nothing.
We know that there are satanic sacrifices. There was that priest in Akron, Ohio, who ritualistically killed a nun. And there was the drug dealer in Mexico who was into black magic and ritually killing people. So it does happen. I mean, the False Memory Syndrome Foundation has done its best, which is a very dubious organization, to say that ritual abuse doesn't occur. But there are examples of ritual murder in the United States, and also in Mexico and in South America. And the guy that was responsible for the ritual murder in Mexico, he grew up in Florida as an altar boy. So he didn't come from the backwoods with a voodoo doll or anything like that. He grew up in Miami as an altar boy. Ritual abuse does occur, and ritual abuse, I do believe that there are ritualistic murders. What's really interesting is the Ken Lanning report. He was an FBI agent, and he concluded that there wasn't any such a thing as ritual abuse. But he'd never been into the field. He didn't know anything about ritual abuse. It's just what he was told, and then he wrote a report on it.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, I would suggest that you and your viewers look at the Extreme Abuse Survey. There's a very interesting book. It was called The Hell Minus One. It was written by a woman who'd grown up ritually abused. And she actually got the police that covered her case to submit documentations and affidavits about her ritual abuse. So people that say it doesn't happen are wrong. It does happen. I'm not saying it's ubiquitous. I'm not saying it's happening all the time, but I'm saying it does happen. And what's really interesting, the FBI categorizes serial killers as ritualistic and non-ritualistic. So pedophiles can't be categorized as ritualistic and non-ritualistic. I mean, I think that there's quite a quandary there.
Yeah, just to make that distinction is interesting. And this comes from the description of that episode. You say, Peter and I also talked about the occult background of Joseph Smith, which included Freemasonry and the genesis of the Mormons. During our discussion about the Mormons, I brought up the issue of ritual abuse in Utah and among the LDS Church. These allegations had become so widespread in Utah that the Utah State Task Force on Ritual Abuse was formed in 1992. The task force ultimately issued a report that concluded ritual abuse was occurring in Utah. On September 2nd, I interviewed Derek Brose about a 5-part series of articles he wrote on the Utah County Sheriff's Office investigation of ritual abuse that was occurring in the county. Wow. So I interviewed Derek Brose about that investigation as well, but it was really, really early when he was just kind of starting it. But what more can you say on your thoughts when it comes to that situation? Did anything come of that investigation?
Yes, that dude was indicted for ritual abuse with within the last month.
Huh. That would be the sheriff?
No, the other guy. It escapes my memory. I can only remember so much dark shit at one
So
time.
if it's not the sheriff, then I'm assuming it's Utah County Attorney David Levitt.
It's the therapist, the therapist
Ah, okay.
who was implicated.
Yeah, therapist David Hamblin.
He was, I believe, he was indicted. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so Derek Bros, I mean, he's a good researcher. If he thinks something's happening, it's probably happening.
Well, he brought the goods. The thing about it is, when we get into this world, people like to just reflexively say conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
My family doesn't read anything that I write. My family has never read a book that I have written. And they just default to conspiracy theory. But here's the thing about conspiracy theory, that term, conspiracy theorist. Most Americans did not believe the Warren Commission that looked into JFK's death. They thought that there was, in fact, a conspiracy afoot with the JFK assassination. And there's been a tremendous amount of evidence that has come out since then. So in 1967, the CIA sent a dispatch to editors and people that had juice that said, these people that are calling JFK or the Warren Commission bunk and are saying that there was a conspiracy, let's call them conspiracy theorists. And then there was some bullets about how you could then discredit or excoriate conspiracy theorists. And the Washington Post and the New York Times used the term conspiracy theorist about once a year prior to that dispatch. And then after that dispatch, it goes up exponentially. So people that just automatically default to conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorists, they're drinking the Kool-Aid of the 1967 dispatch of the CIA. And the guy that wrote that dispatch, we don't know who he is, but his family should be getting lots of royalties from that because it's been highly useful for to the CIA, the term conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorist. I mean, I spent 7 years of my life on the Franklin scandal, and I'm called a conspiracy theorist when everything is heavily corroborated. And before my writing, the book I wrote about lower socioeconomic children and all the articles that I wrote about lower socioeconomic children, and I'd done some pretty heavy duty investigations, nobody ever called me a conspiracy theorist. But then when I get into Franklin, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I mean,
Yeah.
and you know my stuff. You know me well enough over the years. I'm not going to go anywhere that I can't prove.
Right.
I mean, that's just how I am.
Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right.